Good evening, good evening, good evening. This is Damien of the Exeter Arcade, but you already knew that. And today I thought we'd go on a little history lesson. It'll be a very short history lesson, because if I was to go into detail on this video would be 9 hours long. So I thought I would go on a bit of a history about a very important place in Exeter. Now obviously this is a virtual pub project, so it would have to be about a pub. So it'll be about this one. Yes, I've done some, well, I say I've done some research. I've done research ages ago, but I thought I'd finally put it into a video, the history of the Exeter Arcade, or the Devonport as it was known originally, or Mr. Man's House as it was originally known. So, going way back to the early 18th century, this would have been, like most pubs started off as, a public house. Now, for those of you who don't know, a public house was a house that was open to the public to sell alcohol. It was your house, you converted the downstairs into sort of areas where people could sit, and you would bring out your beers, your ciders and all that, and you would have a delicious beer in effectively someone's house. That's where we get the idea of public house. Why publicans are called publicans, you know, public, all that. Actually in Germany, I think it is, they still have something called Schwabenkuchen. Would someone who speaks German please explain how that is said? And that is known as the wine festival. It's a big wine festival they do every year, where if you are a winemaker, you can basically open up your house to the public to sell your wine to the public. It's about a week long, and you put a broom out on the outside to say, yes, we're cleaning out our wine cellar. And that's the idea behind it, is it's last season's wine. You're selling off the last of last season's wine that you haven't sold throughout the rest of the year to pubs or whatever, and sell it off to the public. Getting rid of last season's wine, opening it up to the public. Everywhere in this sort of Germany does it. It's really nice little thing to do. But yeah, that's basically the concept of a public house, is houses open to the public. So this would have been a house. Now originally it wouldn't have been as big as it is now. For those of you who have been here before, if we get to the end of our bar, that's about where the original house ends. And there would have been one floor above it. If you actually can continue to what is now the back area of our pub, and where the toilets are, that was actually a well. That was the well for the local community of 4th Street. They come in and get their water before we had running water and things here. There was actually a well there. I know this because I spoke to a former landlord of this building, who said that when they did some major renovations, they ripped up the floor and they found this big hole that was the well, that someone had literally just put some wooden planks over it and gone, that'll be fine. And then they ripped them up and nearly fell down it. So they had to make that all safe so we could actually build on it and have the main pub. But yeah, so that originally the building's a lot smaller. And you'll find this with old buildings and old pubs, is they start off very small and they start building up bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And that was basically it. It stayed like that. They sort of extended it a little bit out the back to what is now our toilet area. This big frontage here was much more sort of ornate. The entranceway was actually behind this wall here. You came in that way and through to the bar, as opposed to the door which is now just over there. So our pub as an entity stays like that for a long time. Obviously they start adding these big windows we have on the front now, and the beautiful ornate brickwork. I will put some photos to that lovely brickwork here. There's even some dates in here where some of that work was done. But the pub sort of stays mostly the same during that period. And then in 1931, something very important happens on 4th Street. Prior to that, Exeter had a tram network. Exeter City Council, please bring back our tram network. So we had trams running up and down 4th Street all the time, basically taking the job of what the bus network is now. But it's lovely, beautiful trams running up and down. In 1931, it was decided by the local government that these were no longer viable for Exeter. They didn't want them anymore. They were no good. So they filled in the tram lines. Problem with that is they then had to change the angle of 4th Street. So 4th Street is a nice steep road. That's because they had to change the angle when they redid that. That's fine, except every building on this road at the time had a basement, which was undermining the road. So there wasn't enough support. So one in every 3, I think I was told, one in every 3 buildings had to have its basement filled in. Unfortunately for us, that meant that we had our basement filled in. So one of the little rumours that I keep getting told about, whether these are legible or not is another question. But one of the little unknown history facts about Exeter is that we actually used to have a lot of smuggling that happened here. So people would try and come in through the canal system into Exeter and this major town and try and get contraband goods out. One of the big ones was contraband tobacco. If you go down to the quay now, there's a pub called Samuel Jones. That sits on the old customs warehouse that was nicknamed the Tobacco House. The reason it was called the Tobacco House is where they used to burn all the contraband tobacco. So all these people that were smuggling in this tobacco, if customs found it and said, "Oh no, that's not taxed. How dare you?" They would take it and they would take it into that warehouse and they'd burn it, destroy it, get rid of it. So Exeter had this really big smuggling trade going on. Now there is a rumour that I would love, if anyone has any authentication on this, I would love it. Our pub has a big history of being on the wrong side of the law around that time period. A lot of sailors coming in here after hours or during the day when they're not meant to be. There's a case in 1859 where the publican is pulled up by the law because apparently they're having lock-ins during the day when you weren't allowed to drink during the day then. It was outside the licence, weren't allowed to do it. But it was a very popular sailors' pub. And there is a theory going around that the reason it was such a popular sailors' pub is because traditionally you would have smugglers' tunnels come up in the basements of pubs. So you would come in just before port and you get into the tunnels and you take your contraband tobacco and put it inside the pub. And then you drive your boat in and go, "Oh yes, officer, there's nothing illegal on this boat, I think you'll find." And of course you've already got it into the city centre then. And the customs officers aren't in the city centre. And you see this a lot. The Jamaica Inn, for example, in Cornwall, they have smugglers' tunnels still underneath that pub. And this was a well-tried and tested practice of getting your contraband goods. Is you would put a tunnel and you put it into the pub. Pubs were notorious for this sort of thing at the time. And there is a theory that there might have been a smuggler's tunnel under this pub, or a pub in this area. If anyone has anything that can authenticate that, I'd love to hear about it. Personally, I don't know, a whimsical dream, I'd love to believe there were smuggler tunnels underneath my pub. Just the romance of it all. Likelihood, probably not. There'd be records. If anyone can authenticate those records, that'd be nice. But yeah, so that carries on like that. Pub gets a little bit bigger. And then in 1990, the pub is not maybe doing as well as it could have been, and a new landlord takes on. And that's when one of the more controversial changes that's happened here, they changed the name. They changed it from the name of the Devonport to the Crazy Horse. That tends to be the name that most people seem to remember it by. It was a major... They converted it upstairs into a big nightclub, and this became a pub and nightclub. And it sort of kept that trend going. Even today we try to run as a pub and nightclub as best we can. Many of you will know we've had issues with neighbours moving next door and going, "We don't like there's a pub next door." Well, why'd you move next door then? Yeah, it's one of those. It's been here 200 odd years. You can't say you didn't know it was here. Yeah, so Crazy Horse then did that. And this starts the period known locally as the Cursed Period. Because in that time it goes through about 12 different landlords. We have the Crazy Horse, we have Vivo, Class A it's known as for a while, which local rumour is that was a play on words for what naughty things were happening in there at the time. Very much do not approve of that in here now, thank you very much. But yeah, we had all these name changes and constants. It was a Splash Bar for a while. And there was another one, I got speaking to the landlord's son. I can't remember what the name was, but he said it was known as this for about a year, and it was the Russian word for milk, because they're running this really fancy cocktail bar and all this sort of thing. And then eventually, what I think is the most important part for this pub happens in 2018, when I take it on. Early 2018, what's 2017? Kai, how long have we been here now? But arguably, the most important time happened in 2017 when I took it on and it became the Exeter Arcade. And I officially think we now overtake Crossbar as the longest standing tenants. They were here just about 3 years. We're here just about 3 years, so we're about to overtake that as the longest standing tenants in this place for about 15 years. And hopefully we'll be continuing that for another 15, 20, hey, maybe even 100 years time it'll be the Exeter Arcade still, who knows. Other than that, that is a very quick history of the Exeter Arcade building. There is a lot more to that. There's also a lot of people that are involved with this and have been involved with this over the time. If you would like to learn more, I highly recommend you go here to exetermemories.com. This is the exact link that will take you to the history of this pub. The more modern history is not quite there. I say that because it doesn't mention me at all in there yet. I think it just touches on Crossbar, who were the tenants before us. So, yeah, lovely bit of website, loads and loads of information on there. If you would like to find out more about the history of the Exeter Arcades building, go and check that out. Other than that, thank you very much. Don't forget to check us out on Patreon if you'd like to support the Virtual Pub Project channel. We do have a YouTube channel, go and check that out as well if you are not already watching this on YouTube. Other than that, it only pays for me to say, oh, actually, before we start, one more thing. If you happen to have been someone who drank in this pub before I took it on, when it was either Velvet Lounge or Crossbar or any of those, Crazy Horse, any of those, I would love to get some old photos of the inside of this building. Very little exists of what this building looked like inside here. I know what it looked like when it was Velvet and especially Crossbar, because I used to drink in here then, but I never took any photos. It looked very similar now, just not geeky. Anything, if you've got any old photos or anything, if you could scan them in and send them to me, I'd be very appreciative of that, because it has always been my plan to put up a little history wall in here somewhere. But old school photos are very, very hard to come by for this place. So anything like that would be absolutely amazing. I'm going to put it up there. We've got some little photos we found. We did some renovations here when it was Crazy Horse, and we found some old receipts. If you want to put some of those in there. £1.10 for a pint. I wish I could buy it in that cheaper than sell it, but those are the days, hey? Other than that, yeah, so that is that. If you have any old photos, please let us know. To stop me waffling again, I will say thank you very much. Please check out our Patreon. Please check out our Just Give page. We are supporting the NHS charities together. And don't forget to get some delicious food and beer off us on Deliveroo, because as long as we're doing that, the pub's not technically closed. Anyway, have a lovely night. See you soon.